Hi, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. Today, I'm speaking with David Wiens, a true legend in the world of cross-country mountain biking. For more than 30 years, Dave has left an indelible mark on this highly technical sport. He's famously known for his awe-inspiring 6 consecutive victories in the Leadville Trail 100 mountain bike race, defeating some of cycling's most prominent figures, including Floyd, Landis, and Lance Armstrong. Inducted into the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame in 2000, Dave's accomplishments were highlighted by his trailblazing Leadville wins from 2003 to 2008, marked by incredible feats such as breaking the 7-hour mark in 2007 and setting a record-breaking pace in 2008. Dave's dedication to the mountain biking community is undeniable. He founded Gunnison Trails, a nonprofit organization devoted to enhancing trails in Gunnison, Colorado. His influence extended to roles with Aragon Bike Ergonomics and the Leadville Race Series, as well as his creation of the innovative mountain sports program at Western Colorado University. Notably, his commitment to advocacy led him to the role of executive director at the International Mountain Bike Association. Join me today as we talk about Dave's strategic approach to winning races, his competitive mindset in high-stakes situations, and how he stepped into leadership roles throughout his career. Good morning. There he is. Man, that was a mouthful. That's a career. How are you, buddy?
I'm great, Kirk. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I am, as they say in Gunny, I'm stoked to, my kids laugh when I say stoked. It means excited, kids. It's okay. It's okay.
Right, right.
I love the backdrop. So tell me a little bit about the beautiful paintings behind you.
Yeah, Kirk. So I'm visiting Denver, where I grew up, and my entire family lives. And this is my dad's art studio. He was a pioneer in graphic design in the Denver area, and from the 1960s into the 1990s. And then he transitioned into fine art in retirement, and he does oil painting and sculpture. So I'm up in his art domain.
I love it. Absolutely beautiful. Nice place to be. And gosh, I'm going to try to contain my excitement, Dave. We've known of each other for a long time. We were in the same town in Gunnison for years. It's always a treat to have someone from Colorado on the show at any time. But this is very, very special to me. So I thank you. I followed your incredible career and your wife Susan's for a long, long time. And for our guests, again, to level set, my family owned a hotel and restaurant in the town where Dave, you live with your family and have for many years. And so, from that perspective, Gunnison, Colorado, which is, call it, 4 or 5 hours, depending on how fast you drive, from Denver. It's really one of the most beautiful places in the world. From Crested Butte to Lake City, I just absolutely love it there. And I went to high school there and then kind of went to see the world. So really thank you, Dave, for joining us today. I know you're busy and super, super special.
It's an honor to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we do anything, what's going on? And I know you're at your dad's place, but what's going on in Gunny now? End of August, going into September, kind of set the stage a little bit.
Well, classes just started up again at Western, so the summers are pretty quiet with students, and now, all the students come back, and so it's just the excitement around town, the energy cranks up, and then the summer tourism is starting to wane a little bit. There's fall in the air. People are getting excited about the leaves changing, and of course, lots of skiers and snowboarders there. So the coming winter always gets people excited. So, but it's the Gunnison Valley, so the outdoors always offers something. So that excitement is always there in one way or another. But there's something really special about this time of year.
Yeah, for sure. Are you a fisherman as well?
I don't fish. I'm saving that for a time because I've got some buddies that are way into it, and I know they'll help me. I mean, I did as a kid, of course. I fished a little bit. I can kind of fly fish.
Yeah, yeah.
I know I'd love it. That's probably why I'm staying away from it a little bit, is I'm still pretty busy. And if I all of a sudden got way into fly fishing, because I'm a gear junkie, I love the gear. And of course, fly fishing comes with a lot of gear, and I would be
It
buying
does.
all
It
kinds
does.
of stuff, a boat probably, and who knows what else.
I love it. I like that strategy. I think I'll do that too. I'll just kind of wait to when it's appropriate because we really are, everybody's super busy. What about Cattlemen's Days? Is that still rocking in July as always?
Oh yeah, no, it's a
Yeah.
big deal. It's a big deal in the Gunnison Valley, has been for, I don't know, 100 years, maybe longer. The big news this year was just that they had to move the carnival because they're developing housing on the old carnival grounds.
Oh,
Housing
okay.
deal in Gunnison, and so the county was able to develop some good housing for folks. The carnival moved. This is inside baseball for you and me, to the old city market parking lot.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
It's still just a parking lot. So the entire and we live a couple blocks from there, so we lived the carnival, even though we were
Yeah.
a couple blocks
Well,
away.
well, that creates tons of visibility, right? Coming on 50, right? Coming right down Main Street there or the
You
Main Street.
remember,
Yeah.
Old City Market parking lot is a block in, so
Okay.
you
Okay.
can see it from 50.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Yeah, that's a great celebration.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You may not know this, Dave, but interestingly enough, and we're going to get to cycling in a minute. I'm obsessed with cycling in kind of a different way, right? I I fell in love with cycling sort of maybe my freshman year in college. I went to the University of Oregon, hung out with a bunch of people who loved to ride, and so I competed very little, but a little bit. It was enough to just fall in love with it. Ironically enough, I got this in the mail just yesterday. If you can see this, it's it's
Oh,
this
cool.
her name's Hannah Grant. She's going to love that I'm doing this. So she's been, I don't know how many tours she's done, but she's been the chef for a team at the Tour de France. And the coolest thing in the world is it comes in this little pouch, which those who don't ride don't know that when you're on the tour, this is where they put your snacks and all that, and throw it to you. And super clever. But anyway, the point is, I obsessed with cycling. As we kick off today, could you take just a moment, and it's going to sound silly, but really, can you level set the biggest differences or the visibility, the difficulty of road racing, road cycling versus what your specialty is, and that's the mountain biking, racing, that sort of thing. Of course, the gears are different, the bikes are different, but it's a whole different mindset too, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's really and that's an interesting question. So mountain biking obviously happens off road, and a good mountain biking course will have a lot of single track trail. It might have technical sections up and down. Passing is more challenging. The start is usually really intense because you're jockeying for position. Because once a field of 100 riders goes single file, if you're in 50th place, it's an awful long way up to first. And just like traffic on the freeway, a little problem here, and you just keep getting further and further back.
Yeah.
So in mountain bike racing, that dash to the front is really important if you're a fit rider. On the road, you've got all those pack dynamics and the drafting and the aerodynamics, and the teams are really important. So they're quite distinct in that way. But what's interesting is there's almost this middle ground now, and it's called gravel, and it's incredibly popular, particularly in the United States. And it's a road-looking bike. It's got the drop handlebars, but fatter tires, and then they're racing on all kinds of different surfaces. Not really so much trails, although occasionally, just for fun, those promoters will stick a little trail section into their race, and the bike isn't perfectly suited for that, but it's okay. So you're seeing a lot of interest in that middle ground now, which is essentially called gravel racing. And the gravel bicycles are really interesting because, and they're actually working better for a lot of folks than road bikes because you can take them on some rougher terrain. The tires are fatter. They have a smoother ride. You're not going to pinch flat so easily. So, if you're interested in cycling, you should definitely brush up on mountain biking, gravel bikes, and road bikes because you've got all of those. And once you get into it in a certain depth, you'll have all three.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the team dynamics, which is super important, especially in the high stakes Tour de France, the races in Spain, Italy, all around the world. Is there a team dynamic in mountain bike racing as well, or is it pretty individual?
It's pretty individual. The team dynamics, there's certainly, pack dynamics, but it's more, drafting, working together with just like when there's a break in the tour, maybe each person's from a different team. They work together until they try to kill each other at the end.
Yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah.
but not as much pack dynamic in like a World Cup mountain biking race. Now, some of the longer, like the Leadville 100, that's getting to a point where you could have a team really help you, and you could have the domestique style riders. Those are the riders that work for you, and they're sacrificing themselves early to get their leader in a good position because he or she will be in the draft and won't have to work as hard. And then finally, kind of springboard them toward the end of the race when they can really turn it on. But you're not seeing a ton of that yet. But
Sure.
I mean,
I just love that. Is there a book? Is there a book in the future that you're working on? I get so fascinated by, even the domestique, the science, the strategy behind all of this that so many people don't know. So you've got one rider that, dons the yellow jersey or the green jersey or the polka dot, whatever it is, but
right.
there's what, a team of 10 usually, that kind of thing. And I mean, those are hard working folks, right?
Oh, absolutely. And they're all connected with radios, and there's communication, and they're watching, and they're being told things to do. And some riders will actually, carry the nutrition and the hydration back and forth and give it to certain riders. And it looks like chaos if you don't really understand the sport. But there's a lot going on there. And the teams, the strategies between the teams are really interesting. A team could be in almost a chess, like they're in a position where they're going to have to work because no one else, it's not in anybody else's best interest. This one team has to go to the front. And when they're doing that, they're essentially, we say burning matches, meaning you're using up the fuel of your team. You're expending
Okay.
that fuel that then you may need that later on. So there's a lot of different dynamics to that road cycling. Mountain biking oftentimes is who's the strongest and can ride their bike the best on that day. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
and that's why it's appealing to some and not as appealing to others because there's not those intricate strategies taking place.
Yeah, talking about strategy again. This it's such a minuscule, simple example, but I learned by fire. Remember, they used to do I don't even know if it was part of a larger race series, but there was a race that used to start in Crested Butte on Main Street, and then they'd fly down to Gunnison, do a couple of laps around the post office, and then that was it. I participated a couple of times, just for the joy of the ride. And what is that, about 35 miles or so from the Butte down to Gunny ish?
Yeah, 30 miles down, and then but they probably made that race. It was probably an 80-mile race all said and done.
But by the time it was all done, but I'll never forget. So we're coming, the first pack was gone. Like I, I didn't see them anymore after, like, 3 minutes. But so I was kind of holding my own with this second pack, and there was some dynamics that I wasn't aware of, and I found myself coming down through Alma. I found myself strangely at the head of this group and fatiguing. I didn't have any domestiques or anything like that, and everyone started screaming, "Pull, pull, pull!" So which I was foreign to me at that time. Like, pull what? Like, what they wanted me to do is get them up that hill or get the hell out of the way, right? But it was really eye-opening to see the kind of the dynamics of the tour, right? Of the people that are in the race, going whatever it was, 30, 40 miles an hour on a bike, downhill. I mean, it's crazy. Do you get some of that? I mean, I just can't imagine to take that dynamic, and you said single track earlier, and put you on a little bit different bike with shocks and all that, flying down, a single track trail with rocks and branches and logs. And tell us a little bit about the psyche and the type of human being that can throw themselves into a situation where in 1 second you could be tumbling over your handlebars.
Sure, sure. And I started at the very beginning of mountain biking, and so during my time, we went fast for our time, but now the riders descend absolutely incredibly fast because now we've got basically, and the Europeans have always been this way because their bicycles are part of their culture. But mountain bikes, we all got on them when we were in our 20s. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there were some riders who were better than others. I was just kind of, middle of the pack there as far as skills. But now you've got these riders that have been on the balance bike when they were 2, and they started mountain biking when they were 3 or 4. And they're just phenomenal bike handlers, and they go so fast. They can read the trail and make those decisions just like that. And it's almost, they say, you're not going to be a good baseball player or hockey player unless you've done it since you were 4 or 5 years old. That those skills that just become ingrained, that's a big part of mountain biking. That skill set is really important. Someone could be really strong on a bike that could have broken in back in my day because they were so fit. Now,
yeah,
fitness alone doesn't cut it, because the riders, both male and female, are super fit and have incredible bike handling skills. And then if it's toward the beginning of a race or a pack, you're going that fast following 2 or 3 other riders. So your vision's slightly impaired, but you're going to trust that person in front of you somewhat. And it's really phenomenal, the speeds and the skill that the rider of today, that they have on a mountain bike. I'm blown away by it.
yeah,
Totally.
and not much room for error, right? If you're trusting that rider in front of you, quarter inch away from their back tire. Um, I always like to take a little trip down memory lane when it when it all started for you. So you mentioned you were in your 20s or so, mid 80s. What inspired you, Dave, to just keep going? Because obviously, you became a legend, ultimately in the Hall of Fame. But I'm just really from a leadership courage perspective, from an interest perspective, what was it that inspired you to become a not just a great mountain biker, but a racer? And how did you insert yourself into the sport as a leader in the sport, quite honestly?
Yeah, well, there was a certain amount of fortune, good fortune, that went into that, just being in the right place at the right time. In high school, I really got into skiing and kayaking, whitewater kayaking. And so going to Gunnison was very natural. Going to Western Colorado University was very natural because I can paddle my kayak in the summer, I can ski in the winter. But the mountain bike was sort of new then, and it was on my radar, but I couldn't afford a mountain bike. I called it the elusive toy for a long time. Finally, in 1985, I purchased a mountain bike. That winter, I lived in Jackson Hole and just did the ski bum thing, rode the bike just a handful of times. Took the bike then to Alaska for the summer, rode in Denali National Park. That was some of the first mountain biking I did, wearing jeans and flannel and a bell on it because of the grizzly bears.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did a couple races that summer in Alaska and kind of got hooked by the intensity of racing. But I got third third or fourth or fifth in the races I did. It wasn't like I did great or anything, but it was super intense. It was really fun. And then I came back to Gunnison in the spring of '87, and kind of like your story, all my friends from before had gotten into mountain bike racing, and so it was really easy for me just to slot back in with them. And they were going to the races. Dave Moe would load his van up. Remember Dave Moe, and
Oh
he
my gosh, yeah. Yeah,
take
yeah.
us to take us to the local mountain bike races. And so I just got in there and I started doing pretty well in the expert class. And then I turned pro in 1988, and the tune-up bike shop had a relationship with Diamondback Bicycles. Diamondback gave them 5 bikes and said, give these to your local riders and you guys can be a cool local regional team that can promote the brand. And I got one of those bikes, and then that started a relationship with Diamondback. And as I had better and better results, I was able to transition into what they called a factory rider. And at that time, all of a sudden, okay, we're going to pay all your travel and we're going to put you on salary. And so what was kind of cool and interesting about that to me is that I was among sort of some of the first, and Susan was the same, remote workers. We were remote workers because we could live anywhere we wanted. We could travel anywhere we wanted to. We just had to be on that starting line on the weekends, throughout the summer and, spring, summer, fall. But other than that, we could have up and moved to Steamboat or Durango or Denver or wherever. And, I often thought about that. Well, I've been going to school here. Maybe I should move someplace else. Of course, I just dismissed that because Gunnison was so great. Uh, but so part of it was just, the challenge of racing. You want to see how good you can be. And the sport was growing. All of a sudden, signed my first pro contract in 90, and then in 91 the World Cup started, and it's like, oh, we're going to go race in Europe, really? And so we just got plane tickets. That's all we had, and we knew where and when the races were. And the rest of it was on us. It wasn't formalized. The teams, we were a team of two, Susan and myself, but we had to figure everything out in those days. And eventually they added, mechanics and box trailers and the soigneurs that do massage and the feeds, and it definitely grew. But we got to transition from we would do it on our own from start to finish. If you got to a race the day before the race and it was muddy and you rode the course, then your bike was totally coated in mud and you had to clean it and wash it and get it ready for the next day. And there just was no assistance, but it was cool because we didn't know any better. And the best people in the sport were doing that. That's just the way the sport was. It obviously progressed pretty quickly. And then the Olympics came around in 96, and Susan was rode well enough to qualify for the two female spots for the U.S. and rode to a bronze medal, which is really cool. But I always enjoyed the challenge of it, and also the lifestyle, kind of very protective of that lifestyle, where I was able to basically call my own shots as long as I had sponsorship. And so you would try to, obviously cultivate and nurture and cherish your sponsorship, but you'd have some transitions where you might, go to a different team. And I had a few of those along the way. But I always also enjoyed just, putting a number on my bike and racing it. And I still do. I did a handful of races last summer, and while I can't compete, at the front, I'm still, if there's somebody around me, I get to race with them, and we get to do battle all the way to the end, and then, high five or hug in the finish area. And I still get, a huge kick out of that. So, and I love the training. The training is really, if someone said, what's the most important part of racing? I would say the training. That's what gets me out every day, to go for a bike ride, to go for a ski in the wintertime, whatever it happens to be. I really like having that carrot out there. And a lot of people have realized this, that if fitness is a goal, if you pick a fitness event and it's several months away, all of a sudden generally you have this increased motivation to get out and do whatever it is, whether it's trail running or a 5K walk, a mountain you want to climb, a trip you want to go on, a trail you want to hike. There's a lot of different, it doesn't have to be an event that's competitive. It could be a goal that you would like to accomplish, a trail you want to hike, a mountain you'd like to hike up. And so just by committing to these challenges in our lives, that all of a sudden, I say it always, I always am more motivated for everything I do when I have something looming out in the distance that I know is going to be a challenge and it's going to be difficult. And I need to prepare for that. And that preparation really, to me, is 95% of the fun. And then the event itself is the cherry on top, of course.
This is so much good advice there. I think I got most of it down. I love the idea, and it can be applied to anything in life, right? Anything
Absolutely.
we do
Doesn't have to be physical. Doesn't have to be physical.
In the culinary world, we steal a French phrase. It's called mise en place, and it basically means everything in its place. So all of the training that we do, and certainly some people go on to compete, but most people really just want to, really hone their craft and be great at it. But you're really only as good as the preparation that you've done leading up to that, right? So mise en place is super, super important. You mentioned, I was trying to think of the name of it, but I don't know how much time I spent at the tune-up bike shop. I mean, it's still to me today, right? We have a Rappa here in Boulder that I just like the vibe there, right? So you can get a coffee and just kind of, listen, watch races on the television, or hook up with somebody and go for a ride and stuff. But the tune-up, gosh, way before its time, as a community, as a gathering place. Was it Chris? Didn't Chris own it for all those years?
Yes, Chris Haas, and yeah, what
Yes.
he did was phenomenal. And it was, I mean, they had the West Elk Road Club was part
Yes.
of that, and they put on the Munsingware, which is the race you were talking about.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. And one year, the World Championships were in Colorado Springs, so all of the top riders in the world came to the race in Gunnison because it was a week or two before the World Championships, and they used it as altitude training. So there's a really strong heritage there. And in that same space now is double shot cyclery, a friend of mine,
Yeah.
Dan Crane. and it's got a coffee bar, and it's got a great vibe. And you go there and people are hanging out and talking bikes or whatever. You can have meetings there. The TV's on with cycling in the background. It's the culture of it is really special.
I just love it. You mentioned the World Championships in Colorado Springs. So I was there, and it was at the Air Force Academy, and I think Laurent Fignon was the big name there, but there were a bunch of American riders. I don't remember who won it that year, but um, it's interesting because really funny story. So this bag that I showed earlier, right? So I'm standing on the sidelines. We're waiting for the peloton to come through, right? And these things are flying, right? Riders are emptying it, they're throwing it back. So I catch one, but I catch it here. I just catch it with my hand on the rope, and someone behind me catches the bag, right? I turn around and say, I will never let go of this for the rest of my life. So it would be easy if you just gave it to me. Yeah, and he did, but I still have it at home somewhere, right? But
That's
yeah,
great.
oh,
Fignon was in Gunnison. He did the race there, and there was that
oh,
classic picture in the tune-up of Jack Panic holding
yes,
Fignon
yes.
for his time trial.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I just got chills. I mean, I mean, everybody finds chills everywhere. My son, it's all about baseball, but my
Sure.
whole life it's been about this, this culture of cycling. I just absolutely love it. But let's we got to get into to you. We'll get to Leadville here in a minute, but I'm just really curious as you were finding your way, loving the cycling, natural, you and Susan are touring around. Did you always see what was coming in your mind? Were you a competitive cyclist? Like I can make a living doing this. This is my passion, and I'm using that as an analogy because a lot of students who find their way into the industry, they might come to school with us because their grandma or grandpa or their parents were great cooks and they were just touched by it, right? But it was something usually an instructor, a cool externship, a great chef that they mentored under that really kind of took them to the next level. Did that happen for you, Dave, and for Susan for that matter? That wow, this is no longer. I mean, this is no longer just a pastime, cool to do, manage my schedule. I I love this. I want to be a part of it. I can make a living doing this, and I want more. Did that hit you at one point, 1990, 91, something like that?
Yeah, even really in the late 80s, because the only way we could learn about our passion, because the internet didn't exist, were magazines.
Yeah.
So the magazine was Mountain Bike Action, and you look in Mountain Bike Action, and you see John Tomac and Rishi Graywal, Sarah Valentine, all these names and the pictures, and I think even the magazine talked because they came from the moto world, so they really applied motocross concepts to mountain biking, and they called them factory riders, and they even talked about how much they were being paid. So you could see that there was wow. To me, it was really simple. I want to be paid to do this. What do I have to do? You need to insert your name at or near the top of the results sheet. It's as simple as that. And
Yeah,
that's all
yeah.
it takes. It's all it took at that time. And then, and I would go out and do training rides and I would feel really strong. And I'm like, man, I think I can do this. And I'd get in a race and maybe it'd go okay, or maybe it wouldn't go that well. But finally I had some breakthrough races where there was a world championships in 1989. And even in 1988, I was 10th at the World Championships. That was just a bunch of Americans, really. There were two World Championships at that time, one in Europe and one in America. But I got a top 10, and that was cool. The next year, I came out of nowhere and passed, Ned Overend and John Tomac on the last lap, and I got third. I knocked Ned off the podium. That earned me like a little quarter page black and white picture in Mountain Bike Action. That earned me, a contract with Diamondback where they're paying me $25,000 a year and all my expenses and all my bikes. And so then I realized, okay, this is something I can do. And all I have to do is continue to insert my name at or near the top of the results list. And I like to do that. It's really fun. It's a challenge. And I learned how to train. I mean, there's a lot of things I learned as I went because I didn't know what training was. I just go out and ride my bike around
Yeah.
Gunnison. I didn't ride a road bike at all. I shunned the road bike. And then
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
picked up Greg LeMond's Complete Book of Cycling. There's a chapter in there on training and fitness. And I took that and some other things. I built this training plan. I started executing on it because I had some races where I was almost ready to quit the sport. But I built this training plan, started executing on it, had some really bad races. And then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 weeks into this cycle of training, I won a major race, which was a Norman National, the biggest race of the time in Park City, Utah. I'm like, holy cow, this seems to work. And then I won again the next weekend, and I won a national that was 2 weeks later in Winter Park. So really put myself in a good position in the industry by winning a couple of big races. And from there, there was such an enamorment with mountain biking at that time by a very small group of people who, were our age, and they would race in the sport or the expert class. And the bike companies are selling lots of these mountain bikes. It was a really cool time, and you didn't have to do anything except race. Now, if you want to be successful, you better have a really high social media profile. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
or you better have like phenomenal results. And they're a lot harder to come by now than they were in 1990. I can guarantee you that. The whole thing has changed. And so now you have folks out there that may not be that accomplished as racers, but they're really good at social media, and they've got big followings, and they help people out, and people love to follow them. They're the ones that are getting paid. And you could have someone who's getting fantastic results, but doesn't have much of a social media presence, and they're not going to do as well. So if you combine those two things, then it's so important to not all athletes today, but to most of them. And in our world it's just, magazines, there was a 3 month lag time. It would be 3 months before anybody got news of that race. Other than, you remember Velo News. Velo News was actually how we stayed up to date on things. It came out, was it monthly?
And now it's an app. And now it's an app, right?
Different time.
Yeah,
But so I just stuck with that and was able to continue to do well enough. And I was involved in USA Cycling on the NORMA board of trustees, USA Cycling board of directors. I got involved in trail advocacy immediately around Gunnison and Hartman Rocks because I noticed, wow, we don't have many trails to ride on. So immediately started to try to help, work to expand our trail network and create high quality trails. And there was a real sense of satisfaction when other people would come to Gunnison and say, man, you guys have great trails here. This is fantastic. We all felt a sense of pride. And then the community of Gunnison mountain bikers locally, loved to ride those trails. And of course, we'd go ride in Crested Butte. But in the shoulder seasons, a lot of those folks that lived in Crested Butte would come down and ride Hartman Rocks because their trails were under snow up in CV.
yeah.
So that was a big part of it too.
I love it. As I'm listening to you, Dave, I'm thinking about, this idea of influencers, right? It's the same in the culinary world, right? And when you look at Instagram and you look at influencers who may not even be professional chefs, right? They're passionate. They're really good at their skill, their specific skill, whether it's baking but their presence, we count, is it 100 followers, or is it 100,000 followers, or is it 6 million followers? And we tend to gravitate that way. I do it with cycling sites as well, right?
Sure.
I follow a few cycling cafes in Italy and in Spain and stuff, and there's a lot of truth to that the world has changed, and social media has really come along with that. So with that said, and that's what I love about these kind of chats, because it's about the literacy, the legacy, the history, right? So when I think about, and this is for the courtesy of our audience, there's a really cool town in Colorado called Leadville, and you feel like you're on top of the world, right? I think downtown's 11,000 feet. It's crazy, right? We like to ski there, actually, by the way, ski Cooper, because it's small. The kids learn how to ski there. It's not super glamorous, but it's a lot of fun. But there's some cool things that go on in Leadville around trail running and of course biking. And again, I want to always just make this about you, but when you think about some names in cycling, right? Lance Armstrong comes to mind, and Floyd Landis, as I mentioned in the in the intro, not just anyone can defeat someone like that, right? And you did, and you won that Leadville race several times. And I know you're incredibly humble, but I'd love for you to share again from a leadership, a training, a preparation perspective to get to that level, to to get to that level of dedication, of commitment, of of tenacity, if you will, to be able to win a race like that, not once, but twice, not three times, not four times, but five. It just and just dominate. And then also, you know, pass by some of the biggest names in the sport, right? Um, can you talk to us a little bit about what's involved in your training regimen? Your beyond, Greg LeMond's training, but your strategic approach when you were breaking those records at Leadville, what what was going through your mind, and were you that much better than everyone else, or did you just prepare that much more than everyone else to own that trail? And maybe tell us a little bit about how hard that really is, 100 miles on a mountain bike at 11,000 feet, right?
Sure, sure.
There's a
And
lot there. Apologize.
oh yeah, no. And I had never done 100-mile race, and I had never done Leadville. I tried to get in, I think, at some point in the '90s, and oh, the race is full. And I called up the race organizers, and they're like, the race is full. And I said, yeah, but I'm a pro, and I played the pro card, and they said, we don't care who you are, the race is full. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm a little hurt, but I'm a little like, that's cool. I like that. And so when I decided in 2002, okay, I've got the time in my calendar, I'm going to do the Leadville. I went through and I filled out the form and mailed it in, because that's what you did back then, with a check. And about, I don't know, several months later, I get something back saying, sorry, you didn't get in. Here's your check back. And I'm just like, okay, that's good. 2003, I do the same thing. Okay, I got in. I made it. Good. So 2003, I do my very first Leadville 100. And for those of you who don't know, the Leadville 100 is an out and back course. You run the exact same route, and that is absolutely unheard of in bike racing. So I'm looking for the loop, because I'm obsessed with the course. I need to know where this course goes, what the profile. It took me a second. I'm like, this is an out and back. That's crazy. I've never heard of that. But anyway, I go to my first Leadville. I'd already really retired from professional mountain bike racing. My national and World Cup career had ended, or maybe it was 2004. I was still dabbling in it, but I didn't train especially hard for Leadville. I mainly wanted to experience it, because I didn't even know if I can ride my bike 100 miles.
Yeah.
So I lined up that first year, and actually there was a guy named Bryson Perry from Salt Lake, and he just was gone immediately. And I'm like, oh man, he's just gonna kick my butt, but I'm gonna keep, just keep chipping away. And eventually, oh, there he is up there, and caught him. And then he was a much faster descender than me. He put a big gap on me, and eventually I caught him about mile 80. So it was a really good race, and I ended up winning. I never set out to do as many Leadvilles as I could. I just won. Okay, cool. That was fun. I won. And truth be told, the competition then is nothing like it is now. The competition now is absolutely off the charts. The competition then, with all due respect, it just wasn't as deep a field, and it didn't have a lot of the pros weren't doing that race for whatever reason. There were a handful. But then Ken, the organizer, Ken and Mary Lee, would call me up. So, champ, are you in? You're going to do it again? And oh yeah, I guess, I'll do it again. So then I did year 2, and then I did year 3, and then I did year 4. And I never trained for those events, meaning I'm going to do these specific things. I just liked going for long rides, and I was doing a little bit of adventure racing then. So I was mixing it up. But I just felt like I'll get enough fitness by doing a lot of long rides to where I'll be able to do these races. And I ended up, continuing to win the 4. And then it was that winter after my 4th, Lance Armstrong said something on bicycling.com. Oh, I'm going to do this race next summer called the Leadville 100. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be interesting. So that just lit a fire in me, like any challenge does for people who love challenges. And I remember it was December, and I started training in December. And then it wasn't very long, and Floyd Landis said, oh yeah, I'm going to do Leadville too. And that was when Floyd had his little, hiccup with the drug testing and all that. And so very quickly, Lance, I guess, separated himself from Floyd, going, oh, you know what? I actually can't do it next summer. I've got some other business going on. So but Floyd's going to do it. Okay, great. I'm going to race Floyd Landis. I used to race him on mountain bikes, and he's fast. He wasn't that fast then, but he got really fast when he went to the road. So I dusted off my old training, and I started training really hard. And I, created a plan and executed the plan. And that's a really important part of it, I think, is having a good plan. And then it's easy to make a plan. The harder part is really executing on your plan. And so I was prepared that day, and Floyd and I had a fantastic race, and he just was nipping in my heels the whole time. And it was the most intense race of all my races there, because I was just at my limit. And every time I looked around, he was not too far behind me. I could see him. So he was just there, and we came in under 7 hours. That was really satisfying. And then the next year, Lance did come, but I didn't know he was going to be there. I didn't get the word that Lance is going to be there until about 2 weeks before. But in my mind, I said, okay, I'm going to prepare as if Lance is going to be there. And I remember talking to my kids about, and doesn't work now as well, but it kind of does if you know Lance Armstrong, because his thing with all of his tour wins was that he prepared, he weighed his food. They pre-rode the courses. They knew the courses intimately. Their preparation was top notch. And so I said, well, prepare as if Lance is going to be there, as a metaphor for anything. Prepare as if, whoever's the best at anything. Prepare as if Patrick Mahomes is going to be there, if you want a football analogy, because we know that he prepares. And so, I started to, when it really got close, I started to kind of, have some internal fear. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go, because there was not many folks bigger than Lance Armstrong at that time. And I didn't know him, and I'm going to have to race against him. But then as soon as I would kind of get a little, a little bit of anxiety, I would just go, you're prepared. You've checked all the boxes. You're going to be good. And even the night before, I remember, was always my family started coming up, and my brother's doing the race, and I'm kind of getting his bike ready to go. And I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm just, dude, you've got this. You put in the time. Had I not put in the time, I would have been, we all know what it feels like to go into something underprepared. You're like, I can't believe I didn't do this. But I was prepared, and then went out there and had a really fantastic day. Ended up, we were together until mile 90, and we were just trading off poles, and all of a sudden he didn't pull through. And I kind of looked back, and he's like, dude, go. And I'm like, no, come on. No, let's go. And he's like, no, man, I'm done. And so I, punched it on ahead, and I looked back, and he was still coming. So he didn't stop and sit down or anything. He kept coming. But I felt pretty good that year. And then of course he came back in 2009 and thoroughly kicked my butt, fresh off the Tour de France. But then my last Leadville story is then I did it one more year in 2010, and that was the year I got fourth, but I set my best time ever. So I'm really proud of that one as well. And that's when it really started to get competitive. I essentially got a private race with Floyd Landis and a private race with Lance Armstrong. Now there's 25 men and, it's the same amount of women that are all super fit, and it's a battle royale. So I really, I feel like it was great and all, but it was a different era of the Leadville 100 when I was doing that.
Well, and I appreciate how humble you are, because there's a ton of other riders. The way you speak of Floyd and Lance, they speak of you, right? Oh my God, Dave's going to do the race. I'm doing the Leadville 100 with Dave Wiens, and that's got to be super, super exciting. And now, thanks for sharing that. I think I had chills the entire time. I can't even imagine. Dave, just to segue a little bit, you mentioned food a little bit, during your training in there. And since this is, in many ways a culinary centric podcast, and we have a lot of aspiring culinarians that listen, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up nutrition. And it's clear that, mountain biking or any sort of exercise, endurance sport is physically demanding and requires, a certain amount of energy. Do you have anything to share in terms of the types of foods that you incorporate into your training routine to kind of help sustain that energy? And has that nutritional approach changed over time? When you and Susan were just kind of going around the world and learning all of this, Um, was there a nutrition strategy back then, or is that a more recent phenomena? And has it changed over time? You're still obviously incredibly fit. So yeah, just curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, food is incredibly important to us. We love to eat. Like most people, and sometimes we say that, yeah, we train to eat, but we've been really steady the whole time. It's not, a certain, we'll try this, we'll try that, we'll go down this road, we'll go down that road. It's been very consistent, and Susan really has been, I think, the driving force behind this. Is we eat just about everything. Very heavy on vegetables and fruit as well. But fruit is more like breakfast and throughout the day snacking. Whereas for lunch or for dinner, it's vegetables. We eat a lot of fish. We don't eat a ton of red meat. We eat poultry. So we enjoy cooking, and she does a little bit more of it than I do. I came kind of from that old school of carbo loading, so certainly if I'm going to be doing a lot, I'll be taking in more carbs, pastas. We love potatoes, rice, but I think to describe our diet, it's well balanced. It's not a certain diet per se. It's just a well balanced diet, and that includes we both have a really bad sweet tooth. People
It's
that work
okay. It's okay.
that work and travel with me know Dave likes cookies and Dave likes ice cream. It's cookies after lunch, cookies after dinner, or brownies or whatever, and then ice cream before bed. Just about every night. And those are some of the great pleasures of life. But salads. We really love the greens and the salads and do all different kinds. And Susan, in my family anyway, is well known. Oh yeah, it's a Susan salad. It's going to have all kinds of things in it. But then every once in a while, we want the simple, more of a simple Caesar with just the romaine and some parm and croutons and so really food is very important to us. Our refrigerator is always stocked with lots of fresh produce, and I'll ride her to work in the mornings because if you buy greens too far out, they get kind of funky. So I'll drop her off at work at 6:30 in the morning, and I'll run over to City Market, and I can kind of fill in for what we're going to eat that night or for the next day. But lots of greens, lots of vegetables, certainly some protein in there. Love making our own hummus. It's so fun.
Oh, look at you. Yeah,
Make
I love
hummus
it.
and all the different ways you can flavor it. But yeah, and we enjoy going out when we can. Gunnison has a couple pretty good restaurants right now that we enjoy going out to. Crested Butte, some as well. And then we get to bigger cities, of course. Then we love the different ethnic foods. Indian, Thai. I mean, there was a time in Denver where I think there was one Indian restaurant, one in Denver and one in Boulder. And now, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
it's much more common. Thai was hard to come by. But in our travels, to the UK, where there's an Indian restaurant on every corner, we really got used to some of those different types of cuisine. So we're not expert, we're not culinary experts by any means, but we definitely, we prepare most of our food. We don't eat out a lot, and we like to eat well. And with our kids growing up, they're all out of the house now, but we were very into that family dinner thing, like the dining room table or the kitchen. The main table was very important to our family. No television in that room. Never going to sit down and watch TV and eat. It's family conversation, family time, and it was important that we gave our kids a good foundation of a well balanced diet.
Yeah, I
So
love it. Great,
salad
great.
and all that kind of stuff now.
I love the idea of in German we call it a Stammtisch, right? That community or family table is so super, super, super important. I was going to mention as one of these days we'll figure out a way to connect, but my favorite restaurant here locally in Boulder is called Frasca. And so Bobby Stuckey, who has been all around, right? California, the Little Nell and Aspen, but he's a master sommelier, but he started out as a cyclist. He from Arizona, was a cyclist, and now he's a pretty well-known runner. I don't know if he's done Leadville, but he runs all around the world. But yeah, that's where we'll belly up at the bar and share some stories when we have a chance. I wanted
Excellent.
to, and I appreciate the time. I've got so many things to ask, and we're going long, but I love it.
It's
If
fine.
you're game, I've got
Yeah,
a
I'm
few
good. I'm good.
Good, 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 good. I wanted to talk a little bit about trail advocacy, and it's clearly super, super important to you and to Susan and other friends of yours in the Gunnison area there. Um, this idea, and we don't have to go too deep into it, but this idea that public lands provide opportunities for educational programs and interpretive trails, learning about local ecosystems, wildlife, somehow connected to the farm. So it's obviously really important that, let's stick with, cyclists can learn about conservation efforts and become more aware of the importance of protecting natural areas. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the importance of that in your life and Susan's, and how that sort of, was that connected? Did that lead to creating mountain sports programs at Western? And then wrap it all up, and how you decided at a point in your career that you were going to focus your attention on leadership advocacy like this, and some of the work that you're doing now with Western, super, super important for the community. Again, a lot there, but I know very important to you when it comes to advocacy.
Sure, sure. And I guess when I first started riding mountain bikes, we were looking for places to go. Obviously, we didn't have apps, and there weren't we didn't know where to go. It was a lot of exploration. Crested Butte was one of the oldest, cradles of mountain biking. So there were actually some maps and some classic rides up there that I was able to be exposed to. Gunnison didn't really have that. And then, kind of then learning, BLM land, Bureau of Land Management is this, U.S. Forest Service is this, and Gunnison is essentially surrounded by public lands, and public lands are open for the public, and they don't all have trails on them. Some of them do. So it was really starting to improve those lands close to Gunnison. Maybe initially in a selfish way for myself and my friends, so we could start, we could have more mountain biking opportunities without driving the car. But then very quickly we realized that the entire community really loves it. And the Hartman Rocks area, as you know, it's multi-user. There's walkers, dog walkers, trail runners, mountain bikers. It's even open to motorized users. And they all love the landscape and appreciate it and share it. And there was a time when it was a dumping ground too, when there were dumps, trash dumps all over it. And the trail users slowly cleaned those up. So by having a connection to these public lands and public places, that's a protection of a mechanism of protection for those lands. Because as soon as you hear about, we're going to build something or do something, people are like, no, you can't, because these are really important lands for our access to the outdoors, but also for wildlife and so many other things. So it isn't just federal public lands like BLM and Forest Service. Depending on where you live in the country, it might be a municipal park, it might be a land trust that has some lands. Could be county park, state park. So there's an opportunity to get involved with local conservation organizations or local trail organizations, because the trail organizations really cover both bases. It's going to be recreation and fitness-based trail activities, walking, trail running, mountain biking, sometimes equestrians. There's horses in the area, or motos even. And then what the stewardship ethic comes hand in hand with that. So if there's a local mountain bike club, or even a local just trail club, that you can do a little Google search and find one in your area, get involved. First of all, you're going to meet a bunch of great people. You're going to learn about trails in your area. It's going to make you happier and healthier. If you become a trail user, even if it's just walking outside, you're going to become happier and healthier. I can almost guarantee that. Make it consistent in your life. And at the same time, you'll be protecting those valuable places that are, they're the safe harbors for our wildlife. And it's becoming a much bigger deal in places like Colorado, that there is an influx of population that wants to recreate outdoors. So finding this balance between outdoor recreation and conservation and protection of our natural resources is really important. So we don't want it to be just a free-for-all of recreation out there. And that's where the organizations can work together, and the hunters can work with the mountain bikers, can work with the trail runners and the motorized groups to really try to come together instead of warring with each other. And at IMBA, we started a movement called Trails Are Common Ground. and it's at trailsourcommonground.org. And it's a fledgling movement, but really the idea there is we shouldn't be, lobbing grenades at each other from these different user groups. We should be coming together. And first of all, we should be making sure that our trails are diverse and they look like our country, and that everybody is safe and welcome on our trails, regardless of skin color or where they're from or sexual orientation or anything like that. The second piece of it is trail etiquette. Let's have good, responsible behavior, but let's lead with kindness. If you're going to be one thing out there, just be kind. The third pillar is just knowledge to be a good trail user, pillar of etiquette, I should say. And then improving our trail systems so they function better. And, the Boulder area, the Denver area, very busy trails. And there's things that we can do technically with trails to increase their carrying capacity, reduce the opportunities for conflict, and then create better user satisfaction among all users. And those are things like odd even days, where there's some trails above Golden that mountain bikers get to go down the trail on odd days, or I don't know if it's odd or even, and hikers get to use it both ways with no mountain bikes on even days. And so everybody kind of gets what they want. And in busy areas, we need to do more of that. So Trails Our Common Ground is, an attempt to bring folks together, to work together, and protecting the landscape and protecting the cultural and natural resources, particularly wildlife, are part of that as well.
I love that. I'm wondering, I was thinking about Western a little bit. Are you finding in your work with Western that new students, young students from all around the country are coming to Gunnison specifically because of mountain sports and some of the opportunities that they have in Gunnison that they might not have elsewhere, more so than in the past?
You bet. And Western specifically targets, those types of students who are most likely to thrive there because of the outdoors. And when we created mountain sports, we wanted to program that was going to be welcoming to all abilities, including highly skilled athletes, but also maybe some new folks. Hey, I want to get into this and learn how to do collegiate mountain bike racing or do free ride skiing or whatever it happens to be. But the importance of transitioning through the seasons that we have in Gunnison is really important. So if you love skiing or snowboarding or ice climbing or something else that is a great wintertime activity, Gunnison's a great place for that, because we do have a good part of the school year is those winter months. And if you embrace the snow and the cold because you love backcountry skiing or skiing up at the resort, or any other number of activities, Nordic skiing, ice skating on the Blue Mesa, then you're probably going to thrive in a place like that. And then likewise, there's degree programs in outdoor rec and a master's in land management. There's a lot of programs that are right in that that public lands environmental vein, that then you can basically work toward a career in the outdoors, whether it's on the nonprofit side, the for-profit side, or even on the sort of the agency side with federal and regional and state land managers.
Thank you for that. I almost can't believe, as I step back and all those years that I spent in Gunnison. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, people loved to come to Gunnison for the skiing specifically. But the wealth of opportunities now in that still relatively small town are just spectacular. Dave, I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out. I know we mentioned it earlier to Susan, your bride. She's also a former professional cross country mountain bike racer and the first woman to win an Olympic medal in mountain biking. Susan was also inducted into the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame. I mean, wow, right? Sometimes friends are my wife and I are both, trained cooks. So sometimes friends are a little intimidated to come over, right? Although we're the easiest in the world, right? We love community, we love friends, we love cooking. It would be sort of like, people wanting to go for a Sunday ride with you and Susan. It's like, yeah, keep up. But I'm curious if your children have the same love for not just the outdoors, but specifically for mountain biking as you and Susan do.
That's a funny question. We get that a lot. One out of three, our oldest loves to ride, and he raced collegiately at Fort Lewis and still
Oh,
some
okay.
races. He's in Durango right now. He'll come to Gunnison and race gravel at the Gunny Grinder in a few weeks with his girlfriend. The twins, they're 23 now. They're 2 years younger than Coop. They hate mountain biking. They want nothing to do with it. Um, they enjoy the outdoors, but one of them's in Burbank pursuing a career in film. The other lives in downtown Denver, loves the city, loves Denver, and he's pursuing a career as a vocal performer. So the mountain biking thing only really rubbed off on one of three. But to your point about people riding with us, there is always that expectation that all that Susan and I do is ride as hard as we can all the time.
Yeah.
And then we ride with people all the time, and they're like, no, we go at whatever pace we want. Now, Susan does have a reputation. Her nickname is called No Stops because she doesn't like to stop a lot. And sometimes, depending on the group, you get groups that stop a lot, and there's a lot of that. So, from having kids and being on a time schedule when your kids are young, like I've got 2 hours, I'm going to get a good 2 hour ride in. And we're both very much fitness buffs, and so our exercise is important to us for our minds and our bodies. But we do make sure we get it. But when we do ride with others, of course, we're very accommodating, and it is fun to stop now and then.
I'll keep that in mind. No stop, Susan. Hey, buddy, it has been a pleasure, such a beautiful chat. But before I let you go, the name of the podcast is The Ultimate Dish. This is the toughest question of all, right? And so I ask every guest in their mind, what is the ultimate dish? It could be a food memory. It could be a specific dish that you had in Italy during, the time that you were there racing or whatever. But in your family, what is the ultimate dish?
Well, for me, I mean, just what came right to my mind was gnocchi from Italy. And I'll even shy away from it in the US because it never has been the same. But I had never even heard of gnocchi until we went to race in Italy. And just the gnocchi there, regardless of how it's prepared or what's on it, it just seems so much different. And then you can buy it in a plastic package, and we've bought it before, and it's like, this doesn't taste like gnocchi. That's where I'm going to go with that. And food in Italy in general is just, it's amazing.
You're right. It's authentic and it's real. That's a great answer. We haven't had that answer in the past. So I'll make you some gnocchi. That'll bring back some memories.
Love that.
Buddy, thank you so much for spending time. This was the best hour of my week. Continued success and fun and love. And the next time I'm in Gunny, I'll ping you. I'd love nothing more than to chase you down and have a cup of coffee or a couple of pints. But good to see you, and thanks for taking the time with us.
Let's make that happen. Thank you very much for having me on.
You bet, buddy. Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.